success that America had achieved, and they were trying to figure out what was it that made America successful. And so he interviews this Chinese bureaucrat for his book, and the Chinese bureaucrat says, well, they went through this exhaustive study, and they first thought it was going to be the American military that made America so strong and powerful. And they dismissed that after a while, and then they went to the economy and they dismissed that, and they went to the form of government and they even dismissed that. And he said, 20 years ago we figured out what made America unique in the world. And he said, faith. He said that the foundation of this country is in fact a moral enterprise. And when we see, as we have seen in this country, people both in private life, but more importantly in public life, try to move and push faith out of not just the public square, but out of even people's public lives. What we even see the Obama administration now not talking about freedom of religion. They now start using the term freedom of worship, which how many people think all the religion is about is worship, right? It's what you practice every single day. It's not just the freedom to gather and worship, but it's the freedom to go out and live that faith every day. And we've seen the assault by this president on just that. The freedom of people of faith to go out and live their faith every day. Well, I just think it's important that we have somebody speaking up here as president who's willing to be very public about the role of faith in our society, the role of family in our society, those bulwark institutions. And it's not because I want to be the pastor of the United States. I have no intention and no desire to be the pastor of this country. There are pastors all over here who, you know, you guys can do a little better than you're doing right now, I'll be honest with you. Amen? Amen? All right? We can be doing a little better out there in the churches, but I'm leaving that to you. All right? But that doesn't mean I'm not going to stand and fight for the things that are consistent with what this country was founded upon, which was a moral foundation. And I'm very, very public about that because I think that leads to a stronger and freer country. It leads to a stronger economy. It leads to stronger families. It leads to a healthier and wealthier society. And I really think that that's important to understand, that the foundation of what I've been out there talking about is not a religious foundation, but it is a moral foundation. And so that's important for us to understand, that the issues in Washington, D.C. are not issues of management. They're not a management problem in Washington, D.C. All right? There's a more foundational problem there that goes to the basic concepts of who we are as a people. And those are deeply moral questions. And that, you know, we've seen it played out here in the last week with the Obama administration and healthcare. But it's just one of many, many ways that we are and will continue to see it. And one of the things that I think is also important is for me to be transparent about how I approach these issues. And I do, and I'm very transparent about that. You probably can't see there's a teleprompter way in the back, but very good eyes. But I try to be very upfront, try to tell you exactly what's on my mind, what's in my heart, and why I tackle the issues the way I do. And I approach every issue that I deal with through the two wings I refer to as faith and reason. And I always believe that if your reason is right and your faith is true, God doesn't make mistakes, right? And, you know, God created this place and created reason, and so of course his truth and reason are going to end up in the same place. But we have an obligation as a public official to rigorously advance both, right? And not just to accept as an article of faith, but to show to people of faith and no faith how this is best and just and right for our society. And so that's just so you understand where I'm coming from. Yes, I'm a person of faith, and I'll discuss, you know, a little bit about my faith here in a few minutes. But I want you to understand that I'm not just a person of faith, because there are people in America who look to as in civil government, not just for what your faith is calling you to do, but what is right according to reason. And so when I talk about, for example, the issue of life, I agree with you. I don't think God will bless this country if this country continues to kill over 1 million children every year in abortion. But I also know that abortion is wrong, not because I believe life begins at conception, and taking to that life, innocent human life, is a moral wrong. I know life begins at conception. It is a fact that life begins at conception. It's not a matter of belief. It's a biological fact. That as a human being at the moment of conception, that child is alive. The only difference between that child and any one of you is time. But there's nothing different, inherently different, between that child in the womb and any one of us, or that person on life support. They're all dependent. In fact, whatever we are in our life, we're all dependent. It's just with varying degrees of dependency on somebody else or something else to keep us going. And so that's what I want to share that with you, and I'll share that to the American people, that yes, I'm a person of faith, and hopefully you'll hear that these are strongly held faith convictions. But I'm also a person who believes that we have an obligation to go out and be transparent with the American public about why, through God's gift of reason, that these are the right things and the right course for America. Let me share with you just a minute, then I'll be will actually be more than a minute. Share with you a little bit about why I'm here, because I've been, over the past 15 or so years, been out speaking to pastors and people of faith like I said, over the past 15, 20 years. And when I first came into public life, that was not something I thought I'd ever do. I was someone who was elected, and my faith was important to me. Like many people in this country, it was something that was a part of my life. I always say it was sort of something that was sort of over here, something I did on Sundays. If you asked me the question, if you gave me a faith test, I could probably pass that test. I mean, a biblical test, what does the Bible teach and all these things? I think I'd go right down the line and be pretty strong. But faith was just a part of my life. It wasn't central to my life. It wasn't personal. It wasn't something that motivated me and I won't say consumed me, because in a sense it wasn't the purpose of my life. And so that process took a while, and the first step in that process first came when I got married. And I got married later in life. I was 32. My wife was 30, and both of us had our own journeys to get to our married life. And but when we arrived at that moment, we both realized that it was time to discard the 70s and move on to something, and even the 80s, and move on to something that was a little bit more meaningful, and that it was time to sort of water the seeds that our parents had planted many years ago. And so faith began to be a part of our life as we built our marriage on Him. And so that was the first start of the germination for me in faith in my life. And it was, I always talk about the importance of family and the importance of the institution of marriage. I mean, the institution of marriage saved my life. I mean, without my wife Karen and the journey that we've walked on together, I mean, I wouldn't even be near the state of Texas right now. I mean, this was a turning point in my life, and it was an important part. And founding that marriage, even though our faith was but a mustard seed at that point in comparison to where I believe we are today, although it's not much bigger than a mustard seed compared to where it should be, it really did, start that growth. I ended up that year that we got married. I was also a year I was running for Congress, and got elected to the United States Congress. And one of these elections that I look back and just have to thank God, because there's no way I should have won this election. One of the great gifts that I've had in my political career is that no one ever thinks that I could ever win anything. The gift of being underestimated is a wonderful gift. And I think we might have said a little bit of that last night, but we really were blessed. I mean, it was a one in, and the more I've gotten involved in politics and looked at these races, it's a 1 in a million type of race. And here we are. But the beautiful thing was, as rudimentary as my faith was, I got it. I mean, I realized that this was not something that happens. And so there was a part of me, a little part at that time, that was saying, well, you know, why am I here? What am I doing? What's my purpose here? And what turned out was, so I got there and I found the mess that everybody thought Congress actually was what we thought it was. And went out there and saw all of these things that were going on, that members of Congress were enjoying rather lavish perks and things like that, and things that I thought were actually illegal. And we went out and exposed that corruption. And that sort of became my focus in the first few years. And I was the reformer. I was the guy, you know, going and fighting corruption both in the Republican and Democratic side of the aisle in the House. And we exposed something called the House Bank Scandal, and subsequently a post office scandal that ended up having the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee be sent to jail. And that was really the first 4 years, was just this attitude that I was the hired gun in town. That my job, what I was sent to Congress to do, was to clean the place up. And I ended up running for re-election in a very tough district. Again, very little chance of winning. They redistricted me into a 71% Democratic district, very poor district outside of Pittsburgh. All the abandoned steel mills were in my district, and I won. And so I decided to run for the United States Senate. So not only was I the sheriff cleaning up town, I was, you know, the busiest guy in the world, being a congressman. We had 2 children, excuse me, at the time. And so I was just running, and really not thinking about much of anything. Just purely just on the fast track, and going as fast as I could to be successful. And we won. I won, defeated an incumbent Democrat, and second time, once for the House, now for the Senate, and got elected to the United States Senate. And now I had a 6-year term. And I got to the Senate, and, you know, busy setting up, and all of a sudden it was one of those times where I, you know, was reflecting, and just in that time, you know, why am I here? Because again, I wasn't supposed to win. I mean, Pennsylvania has a million more Democrats than Republicans. I was one of 2 who beat an incumbent Democrat that year. So, you know, why am I here? It just so happened that someone from north of here, in Oklahoma, Don Nichols, who was a senator from Oklahoma, happened to tap me on the shoulder one day and suggested I go to a Bible study. And I thought, well, I'm Catholic, you know, going to a Bible study? What do you think? That might not be a bad idea. I mean, well, I know a lot of you folks think we don't read the Bible very much, but so I thought, yeah, okay, that's good. I'll go to a Bible study. And Karen and I, we moved our family to be closer to my job in Washington. We moved our family down to the D.C. area, and we found, you know, we were searching because we didn't like the church that was right near our home, and so we were searching. We found this amazing church and priest, and thought, oh, well, that was great. And then found a Bible study, and the chaplain of the Senate was this amazing guy named Lloyd John Ogilvie, who's a great preacher and pastor. I mean, I don't know, I've never heard the verse of God, but if it sounds anything like Lloyd John Ogilvie, I'd pay attention. Let me just put you that way. I mean, he has an amazing voice, and an amazing, great, gifted man of God. And so all of a sudden, I just started to get fed, you know, and I didn't realize how dry and parched that garden was where my seed was planted. And it just my whole life just sort of started going before me, and realizing this relationship with Jesus Christ, and relationship with the, you know, with what God was calling me to do. And the more and more that I got involved, I just became really on fire with just wanting to learn more, wanting to know more, wanting to spend more time in doing these things. I started a small group yes, there are small groups that meet. If there's one thing I will tell you, that as much as you think things are bad in Washington, and they are, there are a lot of great people of prayer in Washington, in public life, and on staff. There are people who, I mean, there are prayer groups all over the place. There are Bible studies all over the place. There's a lot of folks up there ministering to members of Congress, and your prayers really do matter. I mean, your prayers were the reason I'm here. Someone prayed and lifted up members of Congress and motivated someone to help bring me and pull me in and open my eyes to the things that I felt that I was missing in my life. And so I would just encourage you not to be discouraged and to encourage your congregations to continue to pray, because it does make all the difference. And this is a long story and I'll try to keep it shorter, but so here I am sort of on fire and feeling like, okay, why am I here? So you go through that, why are you here? I'm 36 years old. I'm of immigrant parents. No money, no real reason, if you think about it, why I ended up in the United States Senate, but here I am. And so I thought, well, every victory unlikely, improbable, in some cases impossible. And so I thought, well, I must be here for a reason. And so I started to pray about that and think, okay, well, what am I going to be involved in? I was really involved in welfare reform. And I came from a poor district. Family was very, very, very nice, but, middle income backgrounds, but grew up in a steel town. And I thought, well, maybe that's why I'm here. I'm going to help see what we can do to tear down this net of dependency that's in Washington, D.C. and try to restore dignity and work and family into the communities that I used to represent in the Pittsburgh area. And so I threw myself into that, and it was very rewarding. I mean, it was a great. I thought that was why I was here, to really transform the social safety net into something that was a hand up instead of a handout. And I threw myself in, and obviously we were very successful with welfare reform. But as I was working through that, another issue came up that really pulled at me, and it was the pro-life issue. And I was sitting in my office, actually, working on some of this welfare-related stuff, and there was a bill on the floor of the Senate. I was watching my television, and there was a senator up talking about this horrific procedure known as partial birth abortion, which I'd never heard of before. And I just thought, I looked at that and I saw the description and the diagrams, and I thought, oh, that can't be true. We can't be doing that in this country, and we can't be legal. And I thought, well, I gotta go and do something. I'd been pro-life. I mean, I'd always voted pro-life. But there's one thing voting pro-life, and there's another thing talking pro-life, right? And when you stick your head out of the foxhole on that issue, you are labeled. You're labeled by the folks who cover members of Congress. You are labeled. Years after I started getting involved in the pro-life issue, my children, when they would read the paper, used to think my first name was Ultra. Because once you can be the most conservative person ever. You can even vote pro-life. That's okay. You can be the most conservative person ever. You can vote against everything. You can vote for no government, and you're fine. But once you speak out on the moral issues, boom. You now have your head above and out of the trench, and you are going to be shot at. And that's why most members of Congress won't talk about it. They'll vote that way, but they will not go out and talk about this issue unless it's in front of a pro-life group, and then the press gives you a pass. Well, if you're in front of a pro-life group, you can talk about pro-life. But if you actually do anything, then you're a theocrat. You're the pastor-in-chief. You're this